Winter once again proved how quickly it can overpower even well-prepared societies. In the opening days of January 2026, a powerful winter system spread rapidly across much of Europe, turning highways into sheets of ice, burying cities under heavy snow, and pushing emergency services into non-stop response mode. What first looked like a routine seasonal storm escalated into a prolonged crisis, defined by intense snowfall, biting wind chills, and growing pressure on critical infrastructure. Across the affected regions, snow piled up faster than crews could remove it. Roads disappeared beneath drifts. Public transportation slowed, then stalled. Entire towns found themselves temporarily isolated as conditions worsened. Emergency call centers were flooded with reports of crashes, injuries, and weather-related medical emergencies. In some areas, responders were forced to leave their vehicles behind and continue on foot, carrying equipment through knee-deep snow just to reach people who needed help. This storm was about more than weather. It became a real-world test of preparedness, coordination, and decision-making. As temperatures dropped and conditions deteriorated, every choice carried weight. Whether to stay home or attempt travel. Whether to wait or assume help would arrive in time. What unfolded over the next several hours revealed just how fragile everyday life can become when winter pushes beyond expectations. By the arrival of a second surge of snowfall, it was clear this was no ordinary disturbance. A fresh blast of cold air collided with lingering moisture, sharply increasing snowfall rates and expanding the storm far beyond early forecasts. What began as occasional snow quickly turned into sustained, heavy accumulation that lasted through the night, overwhelming road crews and emergency planners alike. Snow totals climbed hour by hour. In many locations, roads cleared moments earlier became impassable again almost immediately. Visibility collapsed as blowing snow and strong winds created near whiteout conditions on highways and mountain passes. Traffic slowed to a crawl, then stopped altogether along critical routes, trapping vehicles and disrupting freight movement across entire regions. Emergency services reported a surge in demand unlike anything seen earlier in the season, as winter tightened its grip and Europe moved deeper into a crisis defined not by a single moment, but by relentless accumulation and exhaustion. Ambulance dispatch centers recorded thousands of emergency calls in a single day, many directly linked to the storm. Reports poured in of weather-related injuries, slips on ice, vehicle collisions, and exposure-related medical emergencies. In rural and higher elevation areas, standard response vehicles often could not reach patients. In several cases, paramedics were forced to continue on foot, carrying life-saving equipment through deep snow to reach homes and stranded motorists. Authorities responded by escalating alert levels and activating national emergency coordination frameworks. Weight restrictions were imposed on heavy vehicles, and select highways were closed entirely to reduce the risk of further accidents. Snow removal operations ran around the clock, but drifting snow and plunging temperatures severely limited progress. As the storm tightened its grip, officials issued a stark warning. The most dangerous element was not the snowfall itself, but the decisions people made while attempting to travel through it. As snowfall intensified, the strain on emergency infrastructure became impossible to ignore. Dispatch centers across the region entered full crisis mode, handling call volumes rarely seen outside of major natural disasters. Within a 24-hour period, emergency medical services responded to thousands of incidents, ranging from vehicle crashes and fall-related injuries to weather-induced medical complications. Hospitals rapidly adjusted to the surge. Emergency rooms expanded staffing levels, and non-critical procedures were postponed to make room for incoming patients. Many injuries were directly storm-related: broken bones from falls on untreated sidewalks, hypothermia among stranded drivers, and traumatic injuries from multi-vehicle collisions on ice-covered roads. In mountainous and remote areas, access remained a critical challenge. Responders coordinated closely with disaster management teams and local authorities to reach isolated communities. Fire and rescue units were deployed continuously for technical operations, including extracting vehicles buried in snowdrifts, clearing emergency access routes to hospitals, and responding to structural failures caused by the immense weight of accumulated snow. In several areas, residential roofs collapsed under the sheer weight of accumulated snow, forcing emergency evacuations and the temporary rehousing of affected families. Power infrastructure soon followed. Heavy snow and ice dragged down power lines, triggering widespread outages that left thousands without electricity or heating in sub-freezing temperatures. Utility crews worked alongside emergency responders, pushing through hazardous conditions to restore service while prioritizing hospitals, care facilities, and emergency shelters. By this stage, the storm had evolved far beyond a weather event. It had become a full-scale operational stress test for authorities. Officials emphasized that coordination between transportation agencies, healthcare systems, emergency services, and local governments would determine how quickly stability could be restored once the snow finally eased. As snowfall continued and temperatures dropped further, transportation networks emerged as the most visible casualty. Major highways, normally vital economic lifelines, were reduced to frozen corridors lined with stranded vehicles. Heavy trucks, buses, and passenger cars alike became immobilized by deep snow, black ice, and relentless wind-driven drifts. Authorities imposed sweeping restrictions to prevent the situation from deteriorating further. Freight vehicles above certain weight thresholds were banned from key routes, and entire motorway sections were shut down as snowplows struggled to keep lanes passable. In several regions, there was effectively no viable road connection between inland areas and coastal or mountainous zones, bringing logistics and supply chains to an abrupt standstill. Public transportation fared little better. Bus and rail services were suspended or severely limited as tracks, switches, and overhead systems froze solid. Commuters were forced to abandon routine travel, and cities urged residents to remain indoors unless movement was absolutely necessary. In urban centers, icy intersections turned into choke points where even emergency vehicles struggled to navigate untreated roads. The consequences rippled quickly through daily life. Workers were unable to reach hospitals, schools closed or restricted access, and deliveries of food, medicine, and fuel were delayed or suspended altogether. In several areas, authorities opened temporary shelters for stranded travelers and residents who could not safely return home. Officials repeatedly stressed that the greatest danger was not only the snow itself, but the false sense of control many drivers felt before becoming trapped. Each additional vehicle on the road increased the risk for everyone, and for the responders who would be forced to intervene when conditions inevitably turned dangerous. As transportation ground to a halt, the full weight of the storm shifted onto emergency and disaster response systems. Ambulance services, firefighters, police, and disaster management units were pushed into sustained crisis mode, operating around the clock in conditions that made even basic movement hazardous. Snow-covered roads, near-zero visibility, and sub-freezing temperatures turned every call into a high-risk operation. Emergency services reported record-breaking demand. Dispatch centers were flooded with thousands of calls within a single day, many linked to traffic collisions, falls on ice, hypothermia, and injuries caused by collapsing structures under heavy snow loads. In mountainous and rural areas, ambulances were often unable to reach patients by vehicle. Paramedics were forced to continue on foot, carrying medical equipment through deep snow to reach homes and stranded motorists. Firefighters and technical rescue teams conducted hundreds of interventions, most involving vehicles trapped in deep drifts, buses stranded on exposed roadways, or heavy trucks jackknifed across highways. In several regions, military units were mobilized to assist with towing operations, evacuations, and logistical support, underscoring the severity of the emergency. The storm also exposed critical vulnerabilities in infrastructure. Power outages affected thousands of households as snow and ice weighed down transmission lines and damaged substations. Utility crews worked under dangerous conditions to restore electricity, prioritizing hospitals, emergency shelters, and other critical facilities. Temporary housing was arranged for residents displaced by roof collapses, particularly in older or lightly constructed buildings unable to withstand the extraordinary snow load. By this point, the storm was no longer measured only in snowfall totals or wind speeds. It was measured in exhausted responders, fractured supply chains, darkened neighborhoods, and communities pushed to their limits, revealing just how quickly modern life can unravel when winter exceeds expectations. Officials emphasized coordination as the key to preventing loss of life. Real-time communication between emergency services, local governments, transportation authorities, and meteorological agencies has allowed resources to be redirected as conditions evolve. Even so, authorities warned that response capacity has clear limits and that personal responsibility, especially avoiding unnecessary travel, remains one of the most effective tools for protecting public safety. Beyond the immediate emergency response, the prolonged winter storm is now revealing deeper economic and social consequences. Freight transport across multiple regions has been effectively frozen, cutting off vital supply routes between inland industrial centers and coastal ports. With heavy trucks banned from major highways and mountain corridors closed by drifting snow and black ice, logistics networks that normally operate with precision have been forced into a standstill. Manufacturing and retail sectors are already feeling the strain. Factories dependent on just-in-time deliveries have slowed or halted production as raw materials fail to arrive. Supermarkets in isolated communities report shortages of fresh goods, while fuel distribution has been delayed in rural areas. At the same time, energy demand has surged as temperatures remain well below freezing, placing additional pressure on power grids already weakened by storm damage and repair backlogs. Public institutions have also been significantly affected. Schools and universities in the hardest-hit regions have shifted to remote learning or suspended classes entirely. Hospitals are operating under emergency protocols, prioritizing trauma cases linked to falls, traffic accidents, and cold exposure. Elective procedures have been postponed to conserve staff, equipment, and critical resources. The human toll continues to grow even without widespread fatalities. Hundreds of injuries have been reported, many involving broken bones, head trauma, and hypothermia. Elderly residents are particularly vulnerable, especially those living alone or in poorly insulated housing. Authorities have urged families and neighbors to check in regularly, warning that isolation can be as dangerous as the cold itself. Meteorologists caution that while snowfall intensity may fluctuate, the broader weather pattern remains unstable. Additional waves of cold air, snow, or freezing rain cannot be ruled out, raising concerns that recovery efforts may be interrupted and that already strained systems could face renewed pressure in the days ahead. Refreezing overnight is expected to sustain dangerous black ice conditions, and additional snow bands could quickly undo any short-term improvements. Officials stress that recovery will be measured not in hours, but in days, if not longer, depending on how the weather evolves and how closely the public follows safety guidance. As this historic winter event continues to unfold, authorities are clear on one point: the danger is far from over. Even when snowfall intensity temporarily eases, the combination of deep snowpack, falling nighttime temperatures, and repeated freeze-thaw cycles leaves roads, sidewalks, and infrastructure in a fragile and hazardous state. Black ice remains the most serious hidden threat, nearly invisible, highly unpredictable, and often more dangerous than active snowfall. Residents are being urged to limit all non-essential travel, respect road closures and vehicle restrictions, and follow official instructions rather than relying on routine winter habits or personal judgment. Emergency services, despite operating at full capacity, cannot immediately reach every incident under these conditions. Individual decisions, whether to postpone a trip, check on a vulnerable neighbor, or secure a building, can directly influence outcomes. This storm has revealed both the strengths and the limits of modern systems. Coordinated emergency response, public solidarity, and real-time forecasting have helped prevent an even worse scenario. At the same time, the scale of disruption highlights how extreme winter weather can quickly overwhelm even well-prepared regions. If you value clear, data-driven reporting that avoids sensationalism and focuses on real impacts, preparedness, and context, consider supporting this channel. Like the video, share it with those who may be affected by severe weather, and subscribe for continued coverage. Staying informed is not just about awareness, it is about safety. We will continue to monitor conditions closely and provide verified updates as this winter crisis evolves. Stay alert, stay prepared, and above all, stay safe.